Daniel Carter was running late, and he hated being late. It wasn't just any day, it was the most important day of his life. For weeks, he had prepared for this moment, rehearsing answers to potential questions and polishing his resume until it gleamed like a freshly minted coin. Today, he was going to San Francisco for a job interview at one of the biggest names in aerospace technology. If he got the job, it would change everything for him. But right now, all he could think about was how much time he had wasted stuck in traffic on the way to O'Hare International Airport. The airport buzzed around him, alive with the sounds of rolling luggage, distant announcements over the intercom, and hurried footsteps echoing off tiled floors. People moved quickly, some clutching boarding passes tightly while others checked their watches or glanced nervously at departure screens. Daniel adjusted the strap of his leather laptop bag as he weaved through the crowd, trying not to bump into anyone. He kept his eyes fixed ahead, scanning for signs pointing toward Gate 27. His heart pounded in his chest. The flight was scheduled to leave in less than 20 minutes, and he still needed to go through security. He cursed under his breath, wishing he hadn't decided to drive himself to the airport. Public transportation might have been slower, but at least it wouldn't have left him stranded in gridlock for half an hour. Still, there was no point dwelling on what-ifs. All he could do now was focus on getting to the gate before the plane took off without him. As he turned a corner near the food court, something caught his attention out of the corner of his eye. An elderly woman stood by a row of empty seats, bent over awkwardly as she tried to retrieve a small handbag that had slipped off her shoulder. Its contents, glasses, a wallet, and a few crumpled tissues, were scattered across the floor. She looked frail, her silver hair neatly pinned back, but her face lined with age. Her hands trembled slightly as she reached down again, clearly struggling to gather her things. For a brief moment, Daniel hesitated. Every fiber of his being screamed at him to keep moving. He didn't have time for this. Every second counted if he wanted to make it to the gate in time. But then he looked closer at the woman. There was something vulnerable about her, something that tugged at his conscience. She reminded him of his grandmother who had passed away 2 years ago. The memory softened his resolve, and despite knowing he was already cutting it dangerously close, he stopped. "Ma'am, let me help you," Daniel said, crouching down beside her. His voice was calm but urgent, betraying the tension he felt. Inside, without waiting for a response, he began picking up the scattered items and placing them gently back into the handbag. The woman looked up, startled, then gave him a grateful smile. "Oh, thank you, dear," she said softly, her voice warm and kind. "I don't know what I'd do without someone like you around." Daniel forced a polite smile, though part of him wished he could explain how much he couldn't afford to be delayed right now. Instead, he handed her the bag once it was packed and helped steady her as she straightened up. "You're welcome," he replied quickly, glancing at his watch again. Only 15 minutes left. Panic bubbled in his stomach, but he pushed it aside. "Do you need help finding your gate?" The woman shook her head, adjusting her glasses. No, I'm fine now. Thank you so much for stopping." Most people wouldn't have bothered. Daniel nodded, feeling a mix of pride and guilt. On one hand, he knew he'd done the right thing. On the other, he couldn't shake the nagging thought that he might regret this decision later. With a final nod, he excused himself and resumed his sprint toward Gate 27. The next few minutes passed in a blur. He dodged slow-moving families, narrowly avoided colliding with a janitor pushing a cart, and finally reached the security checkpoint. Thankfully, the line wasn't too long, but every second felt like an eternity. By the time he made it through, beads of sweat were forming on his forehead. He broke into another run, ignoring the burning sensation in his legs as he followed the signs to his gate. When he finally arrived at Gate 27, panting and out of breath, he saw the boarding agent closing the door. Passengers were already filing onto the plane, their carry-ons slung over their shoulders. Desperation surged through him, and he approached the counter. "Excuse me," he called out, holding up his ticket. "I'm here. I'm supposed to be on this flight." The agent gave him an apologetic look. "I'm sorry, sir, but we've already closed the gate. You'll need to rebook for the next available flight." Daniel's shoulders slumped. He stared at the boarding pass in his hand, frustration bubbling over. All that effort, all those sacrifices, and for what? To miss the flight anyway? He clenched his fists, trying to hold back the wave of anger threatening to overwhelm him. Just then, a familiar voice spoke behind him. "You missed it, didn't you?" He turned to see the elderly woman he had helped earlier standing there, watching him with a curious expression. Up close, he noticed details he hadn't before: the slight sparkle in her blue eyes, the gentle curve of her smile. Despite his disappointment, he managed a weak grin. "Yes, ma'am," he admitted. "Looks like I did." She tilted her head, studying him for a moment. Then, to his surprise, she chuckled softly. "Well, sometimes missing a flight can lead to bigger things. Don't lose hope yet, young man." Her words puzzled him, but before he could ask what she meant, she gestured toward the nearby seating area. "Come sit with me for a bit. We can figure something out." Reluctantly, Daniel followed her, unsure of what else to do. As they settled into chairs overlooking the tarmac, he couldn't help but wonder if helping her had been worth it after all. Little did he know, this chance encounter was about to change his life in ways he could never have imagined. Daniel sat uncomfortably in the VIP lounge chair, unsure of what to expect next. He glanced around the quiet, luxurious space, feeling out of place among the polished furniture and serene ambiance. This wasn't where he had planned to be just moments ago. His mind kept drifting back to the missed flight and the job interview that now seemed impossible to attend on time. Still, something about the elderly woman's calm demeanor made him stay. The woman introduced herself as Margaret Hayes. Her voice was steady and kind, carrying a warmth that put Daniel at ease despite his anxiety. She offered him a cup of coffee from the tray on the table between them. "Thank you," Daniel said politely, accepting the cup. "And thank you again for your help earlier. I didn't mean to cause any trouble." Margaret smiled, her eyes twinkling slightly. "Nonsense. You were kind enough to stop when no one else would have. That's rare these days." Daniel shrugged modestly, taking a sip of the coffee. It was rich and smooth, unlike anything he'd ever tasted before. He wondered briefly if even the coffee here was somehow better because of the exclusive setting, but his thoughts quickly returned to his predicament. How could he explain his situation without sounding desperate? As if reading his mind, Margaret leaned forward slightly. "So, tell me, Daniel, why were you in such a hurry? Was it important?" He hesitated for a moment, then decided there was no harm in being honest. "Yes, ma'am, very important. I'm supposed to be heading to San Francisco for a job interview. It's a big opportunity for me. If I don't make it, I might not get another chance like this." Margaret nodded thoughtfully, her expression softening further. "I see. And where exactly were you hoping to work?" "It's a company called Starlight Aerospace," Daniel replied. "They're working on some groundbreaking projects in space exploration. I've always dreamed of being part of something like that." Margaret listened intently, her smile widening just a fraction. "Starlight Aerospace, you say? Impressive. Their work has certainly caught my attention over the years." Daniel raised an eyebrow, surprised by her familiarity with the company. Most people wouldn't recognize its name unless they followed the aerospace industry closely. Before he could comment, however, Margaret continued speaking. "Well, Daniel, sometimes life has a way of steering us down paths we never expected. Missing that flight may feel like a disaster now, but trust me, it might turn out to be the best thing that ever happened to you." Her words confused him. What did she mean? Before he could ask, she reached into her handbag and pulled out a sleek smartphone. With practiced ease, she tapped the screen a few times, then held it up to her ear. "Yes, hello," she said into the phone. "This is Margaret Hayes. I need a private jet ready within the hour. Destination, San Francisco." She paused, glancing at Daniel. "Make sure it's equipped for long-distance travel. We'll discuss specifics once we're airborne." Daniel froze, his coffee cup halfway to his lips. Did she just say private jet? And who was Margaret Hayes, really? He watched as she ended the call and turned back to him with a satisfied smile. "You look surprised," she remarked lightly. "Don't worry, Daniel. Consider this my way of repaying your kindness earlier." I'll get you to San Francisco in plenty of time for your interview. But, Daniel stammered, struggling to process what was happening. How can you arrange something like that so quickly? Who are you? Margaret chuckled, clearly amused by his bewilderment. Let's just say I have connections and resources that most people don't. As for who I am, she paused, leaning back in her chair. You might have heard of Skyward Airlines. Daniel blinked. Of course he'd heard of Skyward Airlines. Practically everyone had. It was one of the largest and most innovative airlines in the world, known for its cutting-edge technology and unparalleled service. But what did that have to do with her? I founded the company, Margaret explained simply. Started it from scratch decades ago. It's grown quite a bit since then. Daniel stared at her, stunned. This unassuming elderly woman owned one of the biggest airlines in existence? No wonder she could command a private jet on such short notice. Suddenly, her earlier confidence made perfect sense. I don't know what to say, Daniel admitted, still reeling. Thank you. Really, I can't thank you enough. There's no need to thank me yet, Margaret replied with a knowing smile. We haven't even begun our journey. Over the next hour, Daniel found himself whisked away to a secluded section of the airport reserved for private flights. The jet waiting for them was unlike anything he'd ever seen, a gleaming aircraft with sleek lines and a futuristic design. Its interior was equally impressive, featuring plush seating, state-of-the-art entertainment systems, and advanced controls visible through transparent panels. As they settled into their seats, Margaret gestured toward the cockpit. Feel free to take a look around. I imagine someone like you would appreciate the engineering behind this beauty. Someone like him? Daniel realized she must have guessed his background in aerospace engineering. Hesitant at first, he eventually stepped forward to examine the cockpit more closely. To his astonishment, the instruments were far ahead of anything currently available in commercial aviation. Touchscreen displays showed real-time data streams, while holographic projections outlined various flight parameters. This is incredible, he murmured, awestruck. What kind of propulsion system does it use? Margaret joined him, pointing to a panel displaying technical specifications. It runs on a hybrid electric engine combined with plasma thrusters. We're testing new concepts for efficiency and sustainability. Not many people know about this model yet. It's still in development. Daniel couldn't believe what he was hearing. Plasma thrusters, hybrid electric engines. These weren't just improvements. They were revolutionary advancements. He felt a surge of excitement mixed with envy. Whoever was working on this project was pushing the boundaries of what humanity could achieve. You seem fascinated, Margaret observed, clearly pleased by his reaction. Tell me, Daniel, what drives you? Why aerospace engineering? He hesitated, considering the question carefully. I guess I've always been drawn to the idea of exploring the unknown. Space represents freedom, possibility. I want to be part of making that dream accessible to everyone, not just a select few. Margaret nodded approvingly. That's a noble goal. Too often progress is held back by greed or fear. People like you remind me why I started Skyward in the first place, to connect people and inspire them to reach higher. Her words resonated deeply with Daniel. For the first time since missing his flight, he felt a flicker of hope, not just for the interview, but for the future itself. Maybe Margaret was right. Maybe this detour wasn't a setback after all. It could be the beginning of something extraordinary, as the jet taxied down the runway and lifted gracefully into the sky. Daniel gazed out the window at the clouds below. The cityscape of Chicago faded into the distance, replaced by endless blue skies. Beside him, Margaret sipped her tea, watching him with quiet satisfaction. You'll do great things, Daniel, she said softly. I can feel it. For the first time in hours, Daniel allowed himself to relax. Whatever lay ahead, he knew one thing for certain. He was ready to embrace it. The hum of the jet's engines was smooth and steady, almost hypnotic. Daniel sat by the window, staring out at the endless sea of clouds stretching as far as the eye could see. The sunlight filtered through the thin layer of vapor, casting golden hues across the cabin. Despite the luxurious surroundings, his mind was racing. He couldn't stop thinking about what Margaret had said earlier, about exploring possibilities and reaching higher. It felt like she saw something in him that he wasn't even sure existed yet. Margaret, meanwhile, seemed perfectly at ease. She sipped her tea slowly, occasionally glancing at Daniel with a knowing smile. After a while, she leaned forward slightly, resting her elbows on her knees. "So," she began, her tone casual but deliberate, "what do you think about space travel? Not just the technical side, but the bigger picture. Where do you see humanity going?" Daniel blinked, caught off guard by the question. He hadn't expected her to dive into such a philosophical topic so soon. Still, he appreciated the chance to talk about something he cared deeply about. I think space is the next frontier," he replied after a moment. "We've explored most of Earth, but there's so much out there we don't understand. If we can figure out how to live beyond our planet, it opens up endless opportunities for science, for survival, for everything." Margaret nodded, clearly pleased with his answer. "Exactly. But it's not just about leaving Earth behind. It's about taking what makes us human and bringing it with us. That's why projects like this jet are important. They're stepping stones. Every advancement brings us closer to making space accessible to everyone." Daniel looked around the cabin again, marveling at the technology surrounding them. The holographic displays, the advanced controls, the sheer elegance of it all. It wasn't just functional, it was inspiring. It made him realize how much work went into every little detail, how many minds came together to create something truly groundbreaking. "Is this part of your vision for Skyward?" he asked, gesturing toward the floating hologram between them. "Expanding into space?" Margaret chuckled softly. "In a way, yes, but Skyward is just one piece of the puzzle. My real focus these days is on interstellar exploration. I've been working on a project called Horizon Initiative. It's aimed at developing sustainable ways for humans to travel beyond our solar system." Daniel's eyes widened. "Beyond our solar system? That's ambitious." "It has to be," Margaret said firmly. "If we aim too low, we'll never get anywhere meaningful. But it's also achievable if we put our minds to it. For example, take radiation shielding, one of the biggest challenges in long-distance space travel. Without solving that problem, we'll never make it to other stars safely." She paused, studying his face carefully. "You know a lot about aerospace engineering, don't you? What would you say is the key to addressing that issue?" Daniel hesitated, surprised that she was asking for his opinion. He wasn't used to being taken seriously, especially by someone as accomplished as Margaret. But he decided to give it his best shot. "Well," he started slowly, organizing his thoughts, "I think the solution lies in combining multiple approaches. Traditional materials like lead or polyethylene aren't practical for long-term use because they're heavy. Instead, we could look at magnetic fields, using electromagnets to deflect cosmic rays or even plasma shields. They'd be lighter and more efficient." Margaret listened intently, nodding along. When he finished, she smiled approvingly. "Very good. You're absolutely right. In fact, that's exactly what my team is working on right now. We're experimenting with electromagnetic fields to create a protective barrier around the spacecraft. It's still in the early stages, but the results so far are promising." Daniel felt a thrill of excitement run through him. To hear that his ideas aligned with cutting-edge research was both validating and motivating. He wanted to ask more questions to learn everything he could about the project, but Margaret spoke before he could. "You seem passionate about this," she said, her voice warm. "And talented, too. Tell me something. Why haven't you pursued something like this already? Why settle for a regular job interview when you could be working on projects that change the world?" Her question struck a nerve. Daniel sighed, looking down at his hands. "It's not that simple. I mean, opportunities like this don't come easily. Most people in my position would kill for a chance to work at Starlight Aerospace. And honestly, I didn't think I'd ever have the chance to do anything bigger than that." Margaret tilted her head, her expression thoughtful. "Sometimes, Daniel, you have to make your own opportunities. Talent and passion will only get you so far if you don't believe in yourself enough to take risks." Her words lingered in the air, sinking deep into Daniel's mind. He realized she was right. All this time, he'd been playing it safe, following the path he thought was expected of him. But maybe it was time to step outside his comfort zone, to aim higher, just like she said. Before he could respond, Margaret stood up and motioned for him to follow her. "Come with me. There's something I want to show you." Curious, Daniel got up and followed her to the rear section of the jet. Here, the walls were lined with interactive screens displaying complex schematics and data streams. One screen showed a rotating 3D model of a spacecraft unlike anything he'd ever seen. Its design was sleek and minimalist, with glowing panels and aerodynamic curves. "This is the prototype we're testing for the Horizon Initiative," Margaret explained, pointing to the model. "It's equipped with the latest advancements in propulsion, life support, and radiation shielding. Everything we've discussed today is built into this ship." Daniel stared at the model, his heart pounding with excitement. This wasn't just theoretical work, it was real, tangible, the culmination of years of innovation and effort. He could hardly believe he was standing here, seeing it firsthand. "What happens next?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Margaret smiled knowingly. "That depends on people like you. The Horizon Initiative needs fresh perspectives, new ideas. Someone who understands the challenges and isn't afraid to tackle them head-on. Someone like you, Daniel." He blinked, stunned. Was she offering him a role in this project? Before he could ask, she continued. "When we land in San Francisco, I'll introduce you to my team. They'll explain the details better than I can. But first, let me ask you one last question. Are you ready to leave your mark on the future?" Daniel didn't hesitate. For the first time in his life, he felt completely certain about what he wanted. "Yes," he said firmly. "I'm ready." Margaret's smile widened, and she extended her hand. "Then welcome aboard, Daniel. Together, we'll make history." As the jet soared through the sky, Daniel felt a newfound sense of purpose wash over him. This wasn't just a missed flight anymore. It was the beginning of an incredible journey, and he knew without a doubt that he was exactly where he was meant to be. The private jet descended smoothly into San Francisco International Airport, its wheels touching down on the runway with barely a sound. Daniel gazed out the window, taking in the sprawling cityscape bathed in the soft glow of the setting sun. The Golden Gate Bridge stood proudly in the distance, its iconic red span silhouetted against the orange sky. It was a sight that would have taken his breath away under normal circumstances, but today, his mind was elsewhere. Margaret had already arranged for a car to pick them up upon arrival. As they stepped off the jet, a sleek black sedan waited on the tarmac, its engine idling quietly. A driver opened the door for them, and within minutes they were speeding toward downtown San Francisco. The drive gave Daniel some time to process everything that had happened, and everything that lay ahead. "Are you nervous?" Margaret asked, breaking the silence. Daniel hesitated before answering. "A little," he admitted. "This isn't what I expected when I woke up this morning," she chuckled softly. "Life rarely goes according to plan, does it? But sometimes the unexpected turns out to be exactly what we needed." Her words reassured him, though only slightly. He couldn't shake the feeling that he was stepping into uncharted territory. What if he disappointed her or her team? What if he wasn't as qualified as they thought he was? They arrived at a towering skyscraper in the heart of the city, its glass facade reflecting the last rays of sunlight. Inside, the lobby was bustling with activity, yet there was an air of quiet efficiency about it. Margaret led Daniel to a private elevator that whisked them up to the top floor. When the doors opened, they stepped into a state-of-the-art conference room overlooking the bay. Waiting for them were half a dozen people, engineers, scientists, and designers, all gathered around a large oval table. At the center of the room, a holographic projector displayed a detailed 3D model of the Horizon Initiative's spacecraft prototype. The team greeted Margaret warmly before turning their attention to Daniel. "This is Daniel Carter," Margaret introduced him, her voice carrying authority and pride. "He's joining us today to share his insights on radiation shielding and other critical challenges facing interstellar travel." Daniel felt a knot tighten in his stomach. These were experts in their fields, people who had spent years working on projects far beyond anything he'd ever attempted. How could he possibly contribute something meaningful? One of the engineers, a middle-aged man named Robert, stepped forward. "Welcome, Daniel. We're excited to hear your thoughts. Margaret mentioned you've got some interesting ideas about electromagnetic shielding?" Daniel nodded, trying to steady his nerves. "Yes, sir. I believe combining magnetic field generators with advanced materials could provide better protection against cosmic radiation. Traditional methods rely heavily on mass, which isn't practical for long voyages. Electromagnetic fields, on the other hand, can be adjusted dynamically and require less weight." Robert exchanged a glance with another team member, a young woman named Emily, who nodded approvingly. "That's actually very close to what we're experimenting with right now," Robert said. "Our current setup uses superconducting magnets to create a bubble-like shield around the craft. However, maintaining stability over extended periods has been challenging." Encouraged by their interest, Daniel continued, "What if you added a secondary layer of plasma shielding? Plasma particles could absorb additional radiation while also reinforcing the magnetic field. It might help stabilize the system and reduce energy consumption." The room fell silent for a moment as everyone considered his suggestion. Then Emily spoke up. "That's intriguing. Plasma shielding is still theoretical, but it could work in tandem with our existing design. Have you done any calculations on how much power it would require?" "I haven't run full simulations yet," Daniel admitted. "But based on preliminary estimates, it should be feasible with the right energy source. Maybe even solar panels combined with nuclear fusion. Reactors," Emily smiled faintly. "You're thinking big. Fusion reactors aren't exactly ready for deployment yet, but it's good to aim high." Margaret leaned back in her chair, observing the exchange with satisfaction. She could see the spark of potential in Daniel, the way his eyes lit up when discussing possibilities, the passion in his voice as he explained his ideas. This was why she had brought him here. For the next hour, the team delved deeper into the technical aspects of the project. They discussed material properties, energy requirements, and scalability. Daniel found himself fully immersed in the conversation, his initial nervousness fading as he realized how much he had to offer. His knowledge of aerospace engineering complemented their ongoing research, filling gaps they hadn't even recognized until now. At one point, Emily turned to him with a question. "What about redundancy systems? If the primary shield fails, do you think plasma shielding alone could hold up long enough for repairs?" Daniel paused, considering the scenario. "It depends on the intensity of the radiation exposure. Plasma shielding would buy some time, but not indefinitely. Ideally, we'd need backup magnetic coils strategically placed throughout the ship to maintain partial coverage." "That's smart," Robert said, jotting down notes. "We'll need to test that configuration, but it sounds promising." As the meeting progressed, Daniel began to feel more confident. These weren't just colleagues, they were collaborators, eager to explore new ideas and push boundaries together. By the time they wrapped up the discussion, he felt like he belonged. Afterward, Margaret invited him to join her in a smaller lounge adjacent to the conference room. They sat by the window sipping coffee as the lights of the city twinkled below. "You did well in there," she said, her tone warm and encouraging. "I knew you'd fit right in." "Thank you," Daniel replied, still processing the whirlwind of events. "I never imagined I'd end up here today. Honestly, I'm not sure I deserve it." Margaret shook her head firmly. "Don't sell yourself short. Talent and hard work deserve recognition. And besides, we need people like you, people who aren't afraid to dream big and take risks." Daniel looked out at the horizon, where the stars were beginning to appear in the twilight sky. For the first time, he allowed himself to imagine what the future might hold, not just for him but for humanity as a whole. With projects like the Horizon Initiative leading the way, the possibilities seemed limitless. "Where do we go from here?" he asked finally. Margaret smiled, her gaze following his to the stars. "To infinity and beyond, Daniel. To infinity and beyond." The next few weeks passed in a blur for Daniel. What had started as a missed flight had turned into the most exciting chapter of his life. Margaret's team welcomed him with open arms, treating him not as an outsider but as an equal contributor to their groundbreaking work. Every day brought new challenges, new discoveries, and a growing sense of purpose that Daniel hadn't felt before. His first task was to refine the concept he had proposed during the initial meeting, combining electromagnetic shielding with plasma technology. At first, it seemed like a daunting challenge. The equations were complex, the simulations required immense computational power, and there were countless variables to consider. But Daniel threw himself into the work with relentless determination. Margaret provided him with everything he needed: access to cutting-edge software, state-of-the-art equipment, and a team of brilliant minds ready to assist him. Robert, the lead engineer, became a mentor of sorts, guiding Daniel through the technical intricacies while encouraging him to think outside the box. Emily, the young scientist who had initially questioned his ideas, proved to be an invaluable collaborator, challenging his assumptions and pushing him to explore alternative solutions. Despite the support, the project wasn't without its obstacles. Early tests of the hybrid shielding system revealed significant flaws. The magnetic fields destabilized when exposed to high levels of cosmic radiation, causing energy spikes that could potentially damage the spacecraft. Plasma shielding, though, effective in theory, struggled to maintain consistency under prolonged use. One evening, after another failed simulation, Daniel sat alone in the lab, staring at the holographic display of the prototype. Frustration bubbled inside him, threatening to overwhelm his resolve. He had come so far, worked so hard, but what if he couldn't deliver? What if his idea simply wasn't viable? Just then, Margaret entered the room. She carried a cup of coffee in one hand and a folder of notes in the other. Her presence was calming, almost maternal. "You look like you're carrying the weight of the world on your shoulders," she said gently, setting the coffee down beside him. Daniel sighed, rubbing his temples. I don't know if I can make this work. Every time we fix one problem, another one pops up." Margaret nodded knowingly. "That's how progress works, Daniel. You take 2 steps forward, 1 step back, but those steps add up over time." "I guess," he muttered, unconvinced. "It's just frustrating. I thought I had something solid, but now I'm starting to doubt myself." She placed a reassuring hand on his shoulder. "Doubt is natural. It means you care, but don't let it paralyze you. Remember why you're here. You have a gift, Daniel, trust it." Her words struck a chord. Slowly, Daniel began to relax. Maybe she was right. Maybe all he needed was to trust the process, and himself. Over the following days, Daniel approached the problem with renewed focus. Instead of trying to solve everything at once, he broke the issues down into smaller, manageable tasks. He spent hours poring over research papers, consulting with experts, and running countless simulations. Slowly but surely, the pieces began to fall into place. One breakthrough came when Emily suggested incorporating adaptive algorithms into the system. These algorithms would allow the shielding to adjust automatically based on real-time radiation levels, improving both efficiency and stability. Another came when Robert proposed integrating graphene-based materials into the plasma layer, enhancing its durability without adding extra weight. With each success, Daniel's confidence grew. He began to see the project not as an insurmountable challenge, but as a puzzle waiting to be solved. And every time he hit a snag, Margaret was there to remind him to keep going. Finally, after weeks of relentless effort, the team conducted a full-scale test of the hybrid shielding system. They simulated conditions similar to those found in deep space, bombarding the prototype with intense bursts of radiation. To everyone's amazement, the system held firm. The magnetic fields remained stable, supported by the plasma layer, which absorbed excess radiation without faltering. When the test concluded, the entire team erupted into applause. Daniel felt a surge of pride unlike anything he'd ever experienced. For the first time, he truly understood what it meant to be part of something greater than himself. Later that evening, Margaret invited Daniel to join her on the observation deck of the skyscraper. From this vantage point, they could see the entire city spread out below them, its lights twinkling like stars against the dark horizon. "You've done remarkable work, Daniel," Margaret said, her voice filled with admiration. "I knew you had it in you." "Thank you," he replied, still processing the day's events. "But I couldn't have done it without your team, or you." She smiled, shaking her head. "You give me too much credit. This was your idea, your vision. I merely gave you the tools to bring it to life." For a moment, they stood in silence, gazing out at the night sky. Then Daniel spoke, his voice tinged with curiosity. "What's next for the Horizon Initiative? Where do we go from here?" Margaret's eyes sparkled with excitement. "This is just the beginning. With the shielding issue resolved, we can move on to other critical components, life support systems, propulsion, navigation. Each piece brings us closer to our ultimate goal, making interstellar travel a reality." Daniel nodded, feeling a mix propelling humanity toward the stars. It sounded impossible, yet standing there, surrounded by brilliance and innovation, he believed it could happen. As they turned to leave the observation deck, Margaret paused, looking at him with a thoughtful expression. "Daniel, I want you to lead the development of the next phase. Your creativity and determination have proven invaluable. Are you ready to take on this responsibility?" Daniel hesitated only for a second before answering firmly, "Yes, I'm ready." And, with that, Daniel stepped fully into his new role, knowing he was contributing to a future where the cosmos awaited humanity's arrival. The day of the unveiling had finally arrived. Months of relentless work, late nights, and countless challenges culminated in this single moment. Daniel stood backstage, adjusting his tie nervously as he glanced at the crowd gathering inside the aerospace facility. Reporters, industry leaders, government officials, and curious onlookers filled the space, their murmurs creating a steady hum of anticipation. Cameras flashed, capturing every detail of the event. Margaret appeared beside him, her presence as calming as ever. She placed a reassuring hand on his shoulder. "You've earned this, Daniel, don't forget that." He nodded, taking a deep breath. "I just hope I can do it justice." "You will," she said confidently. "This isn't just your achievement, it belongs to everyone who worked on it. But you were the one who brought us here." Her words bolstered his confidence, though only slightly. Stepping out onto the stage felt like stepping into another world. As he approached the podium, the room fell silent, all eyes turning toward him. For a brief moment, Daniel froze, overwhelmed by the weight of the occasion. Then he remembered Margaret's advice. "Trust yourself." "Good evening," he began, his voice steady despite the butterflies in his stomach. "Thank you all for being here today. What we're about to unveil represents not just a technological breakthrough, but a leap forward for humanity itself." He paused, letting his words sink in before continuing. "For decades, space exploration has been limited by the challenges of surviving beyond Earth's protective atmosphere. Cosmic radiation, among other dangers, has kept us tethered to our solar system. But today, thanks to the hard work and dedication of an incredible team, we're closer than ever to overcoming those barriers." Behind him, the massive spacecraft loomed, its polished surface reflecting the light from overhead spotlights. Screens around the room displayed holographic projections of its key features. The hybrid electromagnetic plasma shielding system Daniel had helped develop, advanced propulsion engines, and modular life support systems designed for long voyages. "This vessel," Daniel continued, gesturing toward the craft, "is the first prototype of the Horizon Initiative. It's equipped with innovations that will allow humans to travel farther and safer than ever before. From shielding against deadly radiation to sustainable energy sources, every aspect of this ship was built with the future in mind." As he spoke, he couldn't help but reflect on how far he'd come since that fateful day at the airport. Helping Margaret pick up her dropped bag had set off a chain of events he could never have predicted. That small act of kindness had led him here, to the forefront of humanity's next great adventure. When he finished speaking, the audience erupted into applause. Journalists scrambled to capture footage, while attendees exchanged excited whispers. Margaret joined him on stage, her smile radiating pride. Together they answered questions from reporters, explaining the intricacies of the project and its potential impact on the future of space exploration. One journalist raised her hand. "Mr. Carter, what inspired you to pursue such ambitious goals? And how does it feel to be part of something so monumental?" Daniel thought for a moment before responding. "To be honest, I didn't start out thinking I'd end up here. I just wanted to make a difference in my field. But along the way, I learned that sometimes opportunities find you when you least expect them. As for how it feels..." He glanced at Margaret, then back at the crowd. "It feels like anything is possible." After the press conference ended, the team gathered for a private celebration. The mood was jubilant, with laughter and cheers echoing through the facility. "Robert," clapped Daniel on the back, grinning widely. "You did it, kid. You really did it." Emily handed him a glass of champagne. "Here's to breaking boundaries, and to whatever comes next." As the night wore on, Daniel found himself standing alone near a window, gazing up at the stars, twinkling above. Despite the noise and excitement behind him, he felt a profound sense of peace. This was more than a career milestone. It was a reminder of why he had chosen this path in the first place. Space represented freedom, possibility, and the unknown, a canvas waiting to be explored. Margaret joined him, holding her own glass of champagne. "What are you thinking about?" she asked softly. "The future," he replied. "Not just ours, but everyone's. Imagine a world where people can look up at the stars and know they're within reach. That's what we're building," smiled, raising her glass. "To infinity and beyond, Daniel." He chuckled, clinking his glass against hers. "To infinity and beyond." In that moment, Daniel realized that his journey wasn't over. It was just beginning. The Horizon Initiative was only the first step toward a future where humanity could explore the cosmos freely. And he knew, without a doubt, that he would spend the rest of his life working to make that vision a reality. As the party continued, behind them, Daniel turned back to the stars, feeling a deep sense of gratitude for the kindness of strangers, for the power of collaboration, and for the endless possibilities that lay ahead.